Hello, I'm Peter Sidwell and welcome to my kitchen. I am joined by Jo, a dietitian today in the kitchen, and we are going to cook a delicious recipe for you. And we're really just going to cook, create, taste some amazing food and talk about nutritional value of food. Now, I've been working with California Prunes for some years now and I have created many a recipe. But this time I actually get to find out your perspective as a dietitian as to where all the goodness is and what it's doing for me and how I can improve my nutritional value of my cooking. So no pressure, Jo, but looking forward to this one.
Up to the challenge.
So today what I thought I would do is, I think food waste is quite an important subject at the moment, and we're going to touch on it today with the recipe we're going to create. But I also wanted to make sure that this was something that was just super rich, full of goodness and tastes amazing. I always want my food to taste really good, and I always try and add nutritional value wherever I can. So today we're going to do some really nice, we're going to use up some roast chicken leftovers from yesterday, which I'm sure many of you out there will open the fridge maybe on a Monday after a Sunday lunch, and you know, you've got some chicken there and what you're going to do with it. So I've got something that will make it taste amazing, okay? So, often have half a roast chicken left over in the fridge?
Yeah, and actually reducing food waste is one of the best ways we can be sustainable these days with our eating. So I'm quite excited about this.
Chefs actually love leftovers because it offers up so many, like chefs love to make their gross margins in their commercial kitchens. That's where it comes from. There's a lot of pressure there to make profit. And some of the most famous dishes are out of leftovers historically. And
this is a new one.
It challenges you, you know, what can you make with that? You know, when I was a young chef training, the head chef would go, right, you're doing staff dinner, what are you going to make with that? And that's where it kind of comes from. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a little bit of a dressing first. So 1 clove of garlic, and it's quite important that we just use 1 clove. Otherwise, everything tastes of garlic because it's raw and we're using it raw. We need to be sparing with it, okay? So I'm just going to shred it really fine. You could use a garlic crusher if you wanted to. I have no problem with that. I just use a knife for everything really. So I'm just going to get rid of that little piece there. Now, let's get our garlic into the bowl in the middle, okay? So we're going to try and make a really nice dressing because the chicken will just sort of absorb the flavors. And rather than just using chicken, I want to use California prunes as well because of their meaty sort of texture when you chop them up. So let's get some lemon juice in there as well. So full of vitamin C, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I love cooking with lemons. I just do it all the time. So squeeze it into your hand, catch the pips and just sort of let it drip through your hand. Lemon and garlic, such a good combination of flavors. It just, then when you hit it with some good extra virgin olive oil, I mean, it's just the best for me. There we go. Good top tip as well, if you've got lemons, pack them in a big jar full of salt and leave them 4 to 6 weeks, and then you can add them to your tagines, Moroccan food, salted lemons. It's amazing. Really good. So it's like food waste again, you know, making up, trying to use up as much as possible. So we've got some dried oregano here that we're going to add. It's one of the very few dried herbs I actually like. I'm very much fresh herb kind of chef. Yeah. Fresh herbs to me, I couldn't cook without them. When you're making a dressing, you want 1/3 acid. So whether it's lemon juice, lime juice, vinegars, and then 2/3 oil for me, gives you a nice sort of guide as a ratio to work to. Okay, and then just a little bit of salt, not too much, because I would imagine your roast chicken that we're going to add has probably had some salt on it as well. A little bit of pepper in there, and that is our dressing really.
It smells delicious from here.
Just smells fresh, doesn't it?
It's really nice.
Just give it a good stir, get it all ready. I like this bowl because you can kind of see everything that's going on.
It's interesting you put the dressing in first. So I would normally add it at the end, but you put everything into this.
Well, my theory is I want everything to soak. I want the dressing to kind of enrobe everything. And I never really quite get why people pour dressing on the top. because there's nothing on the bottom going to work. So that's kind of my theory. So let's put that to one side. Now I've got my beautiful California prunes, very much using them for that kind of texture, sort of adding to the adding that similar texture to what you get from the meat, the chicken leftovers. So, you know, and obviously gives great nutritional value, full of fibre, aren't they?
Loads of fibre, yeah. And actually fibre is so important. We don't get anywhere near enough of it in our diet.
No, I've heard that, yeah.
Yeah, and it's sort of getting worse actually, because often if you're busy, you just reach for something from the shelf.
Yeah.
But actually when you make something like this, which is fairly quick and easy and simple, you can get all those additional benefits from things like fibre.
What would be your top tip for getting more fibre in? What's the easiest way?
Fruits, vegetables, whole grains.
Right.
And beans and lentils and things like that, you can use them from a tin.
Yeah.
Just things like this that you can keep in your fridge. So prunes keep for ages.
Yeah, well, they're ambient as well, aren't
exactly.
they? Just sit in a cupboard.
And you can just add them to whatever you want. So today you're adding them to this, but you can add them to sweet things, you can add them to your porridge, you can just grab them off the shelf. You know, they're easy to fit in to like your healthy, balanced diet and lifestyle.
Yeah.
So they're really nice. But one of the reasons that we need fibre
Yeah.
is it not only does it help our digestive processes, so it helps food move through the digestive system,
Yeah.
but also while it's in the digestive system, it's feeding the bacteria that lives there.
Right.
And the bacteria that live there do lots and lots of useful jobs. So including things like training the immune system and making nutrients and extracting, you know, other nutrients from the food that we eat. So it's a really, really important part of being healthy. And when you don't get enough fibre, you can't support the range of bacteria that we really need. So it's a really symbiotic relationship between us and the bacteria that do all of these amazing jobs for us.
There's a lot going on, isn't there?
Yeah,
That we don't realise.
There's a study that came out fairly recently actually that showed that if you eat 30 different plant foods in a week, you have a much wider range of bacteria in your gut that are doing all of these really useful jobs than if you only ate 10 plant foods a week. And I was having a look at this recipe and I was counting up the different types of plants, and we've got like 10 or something in here.
In one dish.
In one dish.
That's
so
great.
30 sounds like a lot, but actually if you can get them all in one dish, it's easy.
There you go, a little tick for me. Right, I'm going to get the chicken out. Okay, so roast chicken. Now, I actually think this recipe, if you didn't have a roast chicken, it would still be absolutely delicious. I'm just demonstrating how to use up a little bit of leftovers from a family that, you know, family meals often have something like this.
And you could use any meat, could you? Any kind of like beef or anything?
Yeah,
like
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I think red meat for me probably doesn't necessarily take the lemon juice and olive oil and things like that, but you could pork would work.
Yeah.
Chicken certainly works. You could use some cooked salmon if you wanted. That would work quite nicely. If you wanted to, you could add lentils or something like that to it. You don't necessarily have to add meat to it. Roasted aubergine, I find, is a really good sort of textural meat replacement. I tend to peel the aubergine, slice it and shred it, and then fry it all off. And we often use that for different things. But because we've got this dressing and this chicken is cooked, what we can do is just take the meat off the bone. I'm going to get rid of the skin because I don't need that. And I'm not going to chop it, I'm going to tear it like this. And it will then absorb the dressing. And really you want to sort of leave it for 10, 15 minutes in the dressing, and it will just drink up the flavour of the dressing and taste amazing.
And chicken and prunes are both low in saturated fat as well. So this is quite a nice low cholesterol recipe as well.
I mean, you could just cook a skinless chicken breast and do the same thing. It's just often people end up with a bit of chicken left over and do nothing more than put it in a sandwich or a salad, and not very interesting. But this, you know, if you're at, you know, you can put this into a lunchbox on a Monday morning and have a much more interesting meal. So all I'm going to do is just turn everything over in the dressing, and you'll see the sort of the dressing disappear a little bit because it's just soaking into the chicken. And then I'm just going to press it down and let it absorb all those flavours. It's going to get the olive oil, it's going to get the lemon juice. And then what I'm going to do for a bit of crunch is I'm going to add some hazelnuts.
It's another high fibre food as well. So actually, one of the great things about using lots of plant foods in a recipe, especially things like prunes, which are really high in fibre, is they just keep you full for longer.
Right.
So if you were to grab like a processed ready meal off the shelf or something like that, you know, you wouldn't get the same, satisfaction from it that lasts all day. So this is perfect for a lunchbox. Whereas if you're grabbing something refined or processed, actually it doesn't have that level of fibre in it generally. So
no, that makes sense to me. So I'm going to add in, say, I don't know, 2/3 of it, and then we'll sprinkle the remaining on the top at the end. I always roast my nuts as well because I think they become nuttier and crunchier.
Can you buy them ready roasted? I'm just thinking,
I think
asking for a friend.
No, I think you can buy them roasted. Obviously, you pay a premium for it because somebody's done something for you, but you can get them roasted, but they are so much more crunchy and nutty than the shop-bought ones. So, we're going to let that rest for a minute. Now's the time to make a slaw. So, coleslaw's now the trendy way is to call them a slaw, isn't it? Fennel has to be one of my favourite ingredients. I love the freshness of it, and I tend to use it instead of cabbage for coleslaws and things like that. We're going to go red pepper, which I believe has more vitamin C than an orange. Am I right?
True. You are quite right, yeah.
I'm right. There you go.
Although people by weight, you usually eat an orange, and then that has more vitamin C than the amount of red pepper.
I thought I was right then.
But as long as you eat the same weight in red pepper.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
But
Okay.
actually, things like even parsley is really high in vitamin C as well.
Right.
Yeah.
I
But
suppose
obviously
the green vegetables, isn't it?
Dark green leafy
Dark green
vegetables,
leafies.
anything red. In fact, all fruit and vegetables has lots of vitamin C in it. So
Right.
it's not something that people are generally deficient in. If you think about deficiency conditions, so deficiency in vitamin C is scurvy.
Yes.
And we don't see a lot of that
No.
these days.
No. It was from the ships, wasn't it, when they were on the boats and stuff. Okay, so fennel. Cut the bottom off, and then we're going to cut it in half. Do you eat a lot of fennel?
I do. I love it, yeah.
I love it raw. Not a big fan of it cooked.
I quite like it roasted.
Do you?
Oh, yeah. I've just
I'm-
been trying to get my kids into it.
Okay. So, what I also want to do is, I thought we would taste this with just a California prune, because I think this is a really interesting combination of flavours. Now, it's really important when you're making the slaw that you take your time and you shred this fennel as fine as you can. The finer you cut it, the nicer it is to eat.
So can you use one of those slicer things?
Yeah, you can use a mandolin if you
mandolin,
want,
that's
if
good.
you're not comfortable chopping it with a knife. But if you just sort of take your time, and what you'll notice when I chop, I'm not chopping up and down, I'm chopping through, because I'm using the edge of the blade of the knife. I'm using the edge to push through. And it's true what they say, you are safer with a sharper knife because it's more effortless and it is easier to cut than, if you were when you're trying to really cut something with a blunt knife, that's when you're going to cut yourself. But yeah, you could use a mandolin, no problem at all. If you were making loads of it, if you had like a barbecue or something like that, or friends around, you could just use a food processor or the slicer if you want. And I think you can actually use a peeler and just sort of peel it if you want to. But I like to chop. I chop every day doing something or other, so I'm kind of quite natural with it. Spent so many years chopping that you just get used to it. So I'd love for you to try some fennel and some California prune together. So wrap that round and taste it and tell me what you think. I think the fragrance and the aniseed and the clean, fresh flavour.
It's like an explosion, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really, really fresh.
The prunes have like a real richness, and the fennel's so like bright.
It's kind of a contrast.
And crunchy as well.
It's a really, really good combination. It works so well. So, and particularly at the end, you can kind of the fennel. It's a bit like when you have a polo or something. It lingers, doesn't it, afterwards? And it's the same with the fennel. It kind of just lingers. Fennel's a very polarizing thing as well. A lot of people will go like, no, because they've had a really bad experience with Prunes or something like that as a teenager, and they're like, I cannot
I think we can all relate to that.
or they're like, oh, I never knew I liked this. But I think it works so well with so many ingredients and so good for you. It's good for the digestive system, isn't it,
Yeah,
fennel?
again, yeah, really good. And it's really high in fibre, so we've got all of those things going on in this recipe.
So, fennel done, red onion, and we're going to slice that as well. I've gone for red onion, just sort of milder, sort of slightly sweeter, savoury flavour. I think a white onion's just too strong, and all you would taste. And if you can't get a red onion, spring onions would do exactly the same, or green onions or scallions. I got told off when I went to America cooking because not one of them knew what a spring onion was. I didn't realise that they don't call them that over there until I'd sort of said. And they're all sat there Googling, what's a spring onion? And we do have a very global audience, so if you're out there and it's not a spring onion, it's a green onion or a scallion. Now, carrots. We have to be very careful in this studio kitchen because if Pip the dog hears a carrot being cut, she's here. But luckily, she's tucked away in the garden somewhere. So, now, if you have any questions about the recipe today, please do post them in the comments below. And if you want the recipe, please scan the QR code along the bottom or go to californiaprunes.net website, go to the recipe section, and there are tons of ideas, recipes, hints and tips for you on how to get California prunes into your kitchen. So, carrots, nice, and again, the finer you can chop them, the nicer this dish is.
I suppose it's got all that surface area to cling with the oil and the
dressing, and it's just having sort of the nice crunch. I just, like, you can't chuck that in it because, you know, you've got to slice it up nice and fine. So it's nice to take the time. Knife skills is an important thing in the kitchen. I think it's probably one of the most important skills to be able to sort of chop everything nicely. And it doesn't matter whether you can do it fast or slow. Just take your time, do it right, and you'll reap the rewards. What's your favourite thing to cook?
I really, really like cooking curries.
Do you?
Yeah, because it can take some time, but it's quite meditative, and you've got all those lovely flavours and smells in the kitchen. I think it's the smell of it in the kitchen when I'm cooking them.
And got the kids eating curries?
Yes.
Yeah, they're good for it, are they?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they're quite.
I actually think kids like stronger flavours than we give them credit for.
I think when I was doing, I used to do some work with a baby food company.
Right.
I was always saying to them, you know, you've got to get some flavour in there because otherwise they all just taste the same.
Yeah.
So you get a generation of children just
don't like flavour much.
Yeah, exactly.
Or not used
unless
to it.
it's just butternut squash.
Yeah.
just by itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've always sort of, and the kids have to eat whatever's in front of them.
Oh, okay. So are they pretty good eaters?
They are really good.
Oh, that's
now.
good. It's good that they can have that kind of relationship nice and early.
They go through phases though. Like there's always a phase like, mushrooms have been quite tricky.
Bone of contention, aren't they?
Yeah.
I didn't like mushrooms as a kid. I think I was probably.
Either, but now I love them. They're like
I don't like my mum cooking them. Still, my mum's terrible at cooking mushrooms. Terrible.
Have you told her that? Or is
Yeah,
she just quite
I will always. Yeah, I often get asked, "Oh, who was your inspiration? I bet your mum was a great cook." And I'm like, "No, terrible, awful cook." She's better now. She's retired. But she, like two teenage boys, I think it's a pretty thankless task, isn't it, cooking for them?
That's the thing, you know, the breakfast, lunch and dinner cooking is a bit different from creating an amazing dish. And if you spend hours slaving over a hot stove and then you put it down on the table and they're like, oh, what's that? It's really soul destroying.
I know, it is. It is, yeah. Okay, so what we've got our fennel shredded. I mean, you can see super colourful, and eating colourful food is really important, yeah?
It is, yeah. The colours represent different nutrients. So, for example, the carrots have this thing called beta-carotene, and you find that in red and orange and yellow fruits and vegetables. So there'll be some in the peppers as well. But also we've got vitamin C in there. We've got loads of different things. And then from the spinach, which is the dark green, those dark green leafy veg are often really high in iron and calcium and other micronutrients like that. So, yeah, getting a range of them, you know, different things with in different combinations on different days means that you're covering all the bases.
Brilliant. Right. So, in with all our ingredients into the spinach. And it's really important that you do this at the last minute as well, because what you don't want is the spinach to wilt with the acidity of the vegetables, okay? So if you're going to make this and you're maybe not having it for an hour or so, don't mix it, just leave it like that. If you leave it like that, it'll be fine. And then the minute you're going to serve it, that's when we mix it all together and get all those lovely textures and flavors working. So you could serve this just as a straight salad, no problem at all. Absolutely no problem. And it's super colourful. You know, you could serve this up with anything, really. It doesn't have to be this way. And then we're going to take our roasted walnuts. So we've got some nice crunch. You could have some seeds in there. You could add whatever you like. I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil there just for that kind of silkiness and that texture. So we've got our slaw there. We've got our chicken, and we're going to mix that up now. And can you see how little liquid and dressing's left? It's absorbed into the chicken and it's absorbed into the California prunes. So they've kind of become a vessel for flavour. And it just kind of wraps flavour around all the ingredients and sort of brings them together. And I think that's often what makes a really good dish, is when you get the synergy and the harmony of everything all working together, sort of pulling together. So, now you could just serve these as a salad if you wanted to. You can also serve them like in a wrap or in a sandwich or anything you like. But what I thought I would do is I'll take some baby gem lettuce, and we'll actually use the baby gem as our vessel to eat. So we can fill the baby gem lettuce and use it as a wrap, so it's a gluten-free in its own right. But you could just as easily serve it up in a wrap, or baguettes, whatever you choose. But these could sit as well in your lunchbox if you wanted to take them to work or wherever you are. You like to do this sort of thing, don't you, Emily? Right. So, I'll make you one to try, Jo, see what you think. So we've got our slaw on the bottom, and I haven't put any vinegar or anything like that on the dressing because it's in there. Yeah. That's where the big flavours are, with the California prunes and the chicken and the hazelnuts. And you'll sort of get that hit of flavour. And you get the texture from the prunes as well. You get a little bit of crunch. Let me just grab you a little plate. There we go, an edible wrap to go with it. There you go.
Exciting.
Have a little taste of that and see what you think. Okay. I'm going to make myself one as well.
That's really tasty.
So I think it takes something fairly sort of, you know, kind of not memorable, and makes it a little bit more interesting, a little bit more exciting. And
so you came up with this by just wanting to use up some leftover chicken?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, it's really nice.
I love the way the lemon juice and the garlic have just kind of penetrated into the prunes and the chicken, and just gives it like, it doesn't feel like leftovers, does it?
And it's not hard to make at all.
Really easy. And then you get really nice crunch on the hazelnuts as well.
Delicious.
Now, if you want the recipe, please scan the QR code along the bottom. It will take you to californiaprunes.net website. There are loads of recipes there. If you have any questions about today's recipe, for either me or for Jo, please post them in the comments below and we will answer them as soon as we possibly can. But thank you very much for joining us. Jo, thank you for joining me in my kitchen. It's been really interesting getting a totally different perspective on food and cooking. It's been fascinating. I think both me and Emily have learned some loads of information that we didn't know about food. But thank you very much for joining us, and I'll see you next time.